Well, we got some new numbers here. President Trump's poll numbers going down coincidentally as his attacks on the media go up. But the question is this the one that is now spreading the fake news? I'm talking about the White House. Then Chicago suing the federal government over its sanctuary city policies. But there's also an immigration debate firing up a lot closer to home. In fact, right here in Westchester County. Also, tensions rising over North Korea. The president threatening that the rogue nation, as it's ratcheting up its nuclear program, could have hell to pay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening. We'll begin tonight with a look at those numbers. And if you're living in the White House, I'll give you the short answer. Not looking good. President Trump's approval rating sitting now at 38%. Some even have it lower than that. The lowest ever for a president this early in his term by every measurement. Plus, the majority, they frankly don't trust him. They don't admire him, and they're not proud to have him as president. Look at these numbers. They also say he has lowered the stature of the office. Now, the number's not looking much better when you look at the specific issues. Again, majority of the public disapprove of his handling when it comes to health care, immigration, and foreign affairs. More on that shortly. And if people were asked about climate change, they probably wouldn't have given him high marks for that. And now the administration, we've learned, has instructed the Agriculture Department to stop using that term and instead use weather extremes instead. Plus, in a hypothetical matchup with Ohio Governor John Kasich in the New Hampshire primary, Kasich, he would lead by double digits. Think about that. But of course, the president, he doesn't believe in polls. Here is his latest tweet about just that. Quote, after 200 days, rarely has any administration achieved what we have achieved. Not even close. Don't believe the fake news suppression polls. He's also gone on a Twitter tirade against, you guessed it, the media again. Unfortunately, doesn't always have his facts straight. I want you to take a look, and all these are just from the last 24 hours. An example. Fake news media will not talk about the importance of the United Nations Security Council's 15-0 vote in favor of sanctions on North Korea. Totally not true. Lead story everywhere. And CNN was covering the story at just about the same time this tweet hit cyberspace. Supposedly, he was even watching the channel. Here's another one that doesn't pass the smell test. Failing New York Times, which has made every wrong prediction about me, including my big election win, that part's true, is totally inept. Well, when you go on to take a look at the math, the Times actually on a roll. And that's a rarity when you talk about newspapers. Profits up, subscriptions 67 times this before the election of Donald Trump. Plus, after blasting the same Times, he slammed Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal over his Vietnam War record. We talked about this a little last night. While Dickie Blumenthal may have hyped what he did or where he was, what the president fails to mention is the Times originally broke that very Blumenthal story. So President Trump trusts the Times enough to use it in a story to criticize someone he wants to go after. But again, when they take him to task, then it's basically a rag that's untrustworthy and fake news. Then, of course, there's Trump TV. Don't blame yourself if you haven't heard of it. Donald Trump's webpage just launched new video updates trumpeting the president's achievements. Take a listen.
Hey everybody, I'm Kayleigh McEnany. Thank you for joining us as we provide you the news of the week from Trump Tower here in New York. On Wednesday, the president introduced the RAISE Act. For decades, a steady rise in immigration has depressed the wages of American workers. The RAISE Act will increase wages, decrease poverty, and save the taxpayers billions. Americans deserve a raise, and President Trump is finally putting the American worker first.
Sounds like something we'd see in North Korea, but again, more on that later. Calling that fake news would be an insult to fake news. The White House also has hired someone specifically to watch cable news. It's a full-time job, apparently, and promote positive stories that he sees, only the good ones. His title? White House Director of Rapid Response. I've got another one, but I can't say it on TV. All right, let's bring in our panel right now. Shelley Mayer, she's a Democratic Assemblywoman representing Yonkers. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Bill O'Reilly, former Republican strategist, now a member of the Conservative Party. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And you know, guys, people get bombarded here by news, by polls, I should say, in terms of this number, that number. But when you've got the numbers, Shelley, of people who don't trust the president, who don't believe what he says, and when they issue a statement for the White House, believe that it to be untrue. As much as I'm like, I've been telling you guys this for a while, it's not good for the institution. It's a dangerous thing here, because at a certain point, and we're going to be talking about North Korea shortly, every president at one time or another has had to tell the American public, trust me on this one, we have to take unprecedented or preemptive action for something. And what kind of motives will people ascribe when you've, in 200 days, done this to the credibility of the office?
No, I think you're totally right. I think it really demeans the office when there is such a lack of trust. And we are going to have to trust the president, whether it's North Korea, whether it's some other international conflict where American people are going to be at risk, whether here on our shores or sending soldiers and sailors overseas. And the idea that so many people have this visceral distrust of this person, as well as thinking he doesn't represent us well, I think it's a real institutional challenge. I mean, it's very disturbing. I just came back from Canada, and I would say it's a conservative country, and there's a sense of, are you kidding? This is the person who's representing this great United States? Sort of, aren't you embarrassed? And I think institutionally we have some very challenging times ahead.
And it's from the silly to the serious, Dominic. I mean, we did, at the end of last week, we cataloged, it wasn't us, the Times and the Washington Post, how many lies he's told since he's been in office. He's clocking it more than 4 a day, okay? And that's just the public stuff. Forget about what he says behind closed doors. And they range from, oh my God, as a candidate, I'd never play any golf and everything else. Now he's goofing off more than anybody, and he's playing more rounds, and he lies about even since he's been president when he is playing golf and when he's not. People are watching to see if he's got a golf glove on his hand, or he'll keep the media away, but still somebody will take a shot of him on the golf course, not even telling the truth about something as silly as golf. Moreover, you've got the more serious stuff. I mentioned before, literally you had the agriculture department. It got leaked to the press, and this is happening in every single department here. They're being told to call global warming something completely different here. The public's getting hustled again. I mean, your phrase here, but it's true. It's hard to get that thing back. And to me, I just think it's congenital. Anybody who covered him, and you covered him, anybody who knows him knows, I don't think he looks his lying the same way as the rest of us do. It's just an alternative reality here. And you know what? I'm close enough for government work. You know, if I say I did this, but I did the other. I mean, something as silly as golf. Nobody takes 8-foot putts, okay? He takes 8-foot putts, lies about his score, lies about everything that's going on here, and it's a metaphor for how he's governed so far.
As you're speaking, all I can think about is the comment he made about the size of his hands. But
please don't go there.
Yeah, let's leave that one alone. There's good news and there's bad news. Which one do you want first?
Give me the good one. I could use it.
The good news is Americans experimented. Americans wanted change, and you got change. You got what you asked for. You wanted Mr. Apprentice. You got him. Outside the states of New York and other blue states and California and so on, despite the fact that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. The bad news is you had the experiment, but you're stuck with this guy for the next 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah. Well, you know something I don't know.
I'm assuming leading up to the election when I was under the assumption that he wouldn't run for re-election because I don't see.
Let's not go down that road
I don't see how you can run for re-election.
What number jumped out at you, Andrew, when we looked at those poll numbers? Forget job dissatisfaction, performance here, trustworthiness. Was there something that said, wow, in only 200 days, it's already there?
I mean, the totality of the whole thing, nothing. I mean, I've been reading a lot of these polls, so they're fairly consistent. We saw the Quinnipiac poll from earlier this week, and the numbers are fairly close. It's, you know, I look at the overall approval number. We thought that he had a floor to what his base was in all of this. I don't think he does, or at least we haven't hit it yet. I mean, Quinnipiac has him at 33, CNN has him at 37, I think it was. But there is more room for him to slide. The other thing is the breakdown. He's not winning on anything except, believe it or not, foreign policy, and that may go down the tubes with North Korea and the stuff that we're talking about on our next topic. But, you know, looking at the Quinnipiac poll, men, he was split 47-47. He wins with Republicans, conservatives, and he wins on foreign policy. Nothing else does he get a majority or even a plurality of approval for. So,
well, to Andrew's point, Bill, the floor that everybody said, well, he's got a base of 33, and to quote Donald Trump, the candidate, I could go and shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue and they'd still vote for me. And we believe that to be a truism to a certain point. But I gave one of the numbers, which was, now again, Donald Trump reportedly said that New Hampshire is a drug-infested den, I think, at a certain point, which didn't go over too well with the folks in the Granite State, shockingly. Anyway, in a hypothetical, and these mean nothing except to give you a snapshot where we are now, he'd lose to Kasich by 10 points. How much buyer's remorse is there? I know some Republicans like yourself, right, said he doesn't speak for me. But even those who held their nose and still voted for him, or even some of those in the base that seemingly are starting to ebb, how much buyer's remorse do you think we're starting to see among Republicans?
I think we're seeing some of it, but there's a lot further to go. I mean, this is a death by 1,000 self-inflicted cuts. The stat that jumped out to me was don't admire. The question about don't admire, and if you break that number down and look into non-college educated whites, which was Trump's base, that number has really dropped there. That was the thing, was Trump was the guy from The Apprentice. He was the guy who had the touch of gold. They admired him. They wanted to be like Trump. He was an aspirational figure in their minds. That's falling out, and to me, that's the thing that hurts him the most. Is that when 67% of the country no longer admires him, that's a real problem for him.
I'm sure, Shelley, you've had a constituent who must have said, I voted for the guy, but X has made me say, what was I thinking? Has there been a tipping point, just regular people, not people like us who follow the minutia every day, that said, wait a minute, I didn't know he'd do that?
Well, I have a fair number of people who voted for him. The point is not the one you made, it's the reduction in gloating. The gloating went very harshly during the campaign. It was personal. It was really objectionable about him, those that voted for him in my district. Many of whom are my supporters as well. And I tried to say, we have differences of opinion. I don't understand the hating of Hillary, but I understand this guy spoke to you. They stopped gloating. They haven't said something changed. I would say with the law enforcement community, and I have a close relationship with them, I believe many law enforcement, people in law enforcement did vote for him. They found his voice spoke to them, and they didn't like Hillary. I think many of them personally are quite turned off by his failure to be a disciplined person, to respect the chain of command, the rule of law in our society, as much as you may not like the outcome. Yeah. So I think in law enforcement, I've noticed a real trend, I think, to sort of quietly step away. Not what you said, not to say he went too far. Very few people say that. But
they wouldn't be slapping a bumper sticker on the back of their car today. Okay. Well, one of the areas Andrew mentioned that he still had some level of support was foreign policy. When we come back, a war of words between President Trump and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Listening to those guys, you'd think we were on the brink of an actual war. If you haven't heard some of the dialogue, buckle up here because this is some serious stuff. We're going to show you what they said and what they're doing.